and letting him.
Here they come. Ready now.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome to a special session of the Digital Directors Lounge. I'm Robert Ambrose, your host, and I'm joined this evening with several of my colleagues from the Creative Repertoire Initiative. We're so glad to have you here. We're just going to let the door open, and that'll take a few minutes to get everybody in. And once that happens, we'll get started. One of the things we like to do in the Digital Directors Lounge, if you're so inclined, we'd love to have cameras on instead of off. And if you're in a situation where you can't do that, we absolutely respect that, and we would never want more than that. But if you're in a place where you can put your camera on, even if you're going to walk away from the camera a few times, doesn't offend us at all. But we really do like to be able to see the people we're talking to, rather than just sort of chatting at a bunch of names. I see Leonard Bernstein's with us, by the way. That's great. LB, thanks for joining us from beyond. It literally says Leonard Bernstein right there. So we'll just wait a couple more minutes to get everybody in the door, and then I'll ask my my CRI colleagues to unmute themselves, and we can get rolling here. Just a few more people coming in, just maybe one more minute. All right, friends. Well, I'm Robert Ambrose, Director of Bands at Georgia State University. I'm the host of the Digital Directors Lounge, and I'm one of the members of the Creative Repertoire Initiative. And it's my pleasure to welcome you this evening to a special Thursday night session of the Digital Directors Lounge. We've been meeting every Tuesday night since April and have had thousands of participants joining in with us. And we're glad to offer this, this special Thursday session to let some composers talk about their adaptable music for band. We, as a group, a Creative Repertoire Initiative, are not using the word flex because some of the composers in our initiative are doing music that could be considered flex music, but many of them are not. So we're going with the term adaptable music instead. And we're going to have 6 of my colleagues here this evening to speak to you from CRI. And in addition, another 13 composers who are going to present their music. It's going to go kind of quickly with that many people. There won't be a lot of time for each person, but we will leave time for question and answer in between. So I'd like to start by introducing a few people. My co-host every week for the Digital Directors Lounge is Jeffrey Rouser, and he's here from Morgan County High School. Jeffrey and I have been in this endeavor from day one together, and I'm pleased to have him with me. Also helping out with co-hosting duties tonight is Ellie Anderson, one of my graduate students in the wind conducting program at Georgia State. And then to just quickly introduce the composers that we have with us, we have Mr. Frank Kelly, Alex Shapiro, John Mackey, Jennifer Jolly, Brian Balmages, and Pete Meekin. So let's give my colleagues a big hand, and thanks guys for being such great composers and such great leaders in the field. That represents about half of our initiative. There are 12 of us together. And we're going to just give a brief overview of what the Creative Repertoire Initiative is, how it started, what our goals are, and then we're going to dig in and start looking at music, adaptable music for bands. So my dear friend Frank Kelly is the driving force and really the first person to get this whole thing moving. So Frank is going to take a few minutes to tell us about the genesis of CRI.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Robert, and welcome all of you. I'll give you a quick and dirty description of how this all got started. It's sometime in April when we were all still getting over the shock, right, of this new normal, adjusting to the new normal, when I got a call from my dear friend, conductor Alan McMurray. And it was a friendly conversation, but the gist of Alan's message was clear. He was basically saying to me, Frank, music educators everywhere are facing huge challenges next year. What are you going to do to help? That was basically the thrust of his talk. And my first thoughts were, I don't know. I'm just enjoying this bowl of ice cream, Alan? I'm just going to wait this out, I think. You know, this pandemic, it's going to go away, right? And then we're all going to snap back to the new normal before we know it, right, Alan? And Alan was not impressed. He sort of had to educate me. He said, Frank, we're already hearing that school districts may be mandating that as few as 7 or 8 kids could meet in a normal sized classroom in the coming year, and maybe even fewer where wind playing is involved. And if the teachers don't have music that adapts to that kind of situation, it may become difficult for those music educators to keep the students inspired. Students may become disillusioned and they may drop out. Programs could be decimated, and it could take years for some to recover. You know, some may never recover. So, you know, now I'm starting to get it. The seriousness of the situation became clearer to me, and I began to slowly to realize that my answer to Alan's question would at least involve making adaptable arrangements of my own music. That's something that I could do, especially with time being so pressing, because you need this, you know, we need this stuff now. And so I thought the quickest thing I could contribute would be just to write some adaptable music. But I also knew that by myself, I alone would just barely make a dent in the problem. And I needed allies in the battle. And so I just began calling my composer friends, some of whom you see here. And around this time, Robert Ambrose jumped on board, and he began making calls as well. And so we were amazed. I think you agree with me, Robert. We were amazed by how little arm twisting was required to enlist our allies. I mean, long story short, 10 other composers graciously joined me and Robert, agreeing to devote their time and their talents into what would eventually become what we now call the Creative Repertoire Initiative. And it was after just a few meetings that we determined that we would sort of be 3 things. We would be a think tank, a do tank, and that's borrowing from the German. The Germans actually have a word for that. We have think tank, the Germans have a do tank. And so we'd be a think tank and a do tank. And then thirdly, a facilitator, and that's where our our tutorials and things that we have on the website help, tutorials, anything we could do to help facilitate the process. And then also, along with facilitating, it's also providing a mouthpiece, and allowing you to amplify your own voices, to amplify the voices of other composers. And that's sort of what we're doing here. And so that's sort of the genesis of the organization. In our first early meetings, we brainstormed all kinds of possible ways to do this. Yes, as Robert mentioned, the flex approach that has been around for quite a while, addressing the needs of small bands, that's been around long before COVID-19. That's been around, but we thought we needed to think of other ways, not just that one way, because that's one way to do it, but even more radical ways and also more diverse ways. And so we brainstormed all kinds of other ways to do this. And we started doing them as well. And now we're interested in hearing from others and see what they're doing. And that brings us to where we are here right now. So how's that for the genesis, Robert?
That's how it happened. Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
So much.
And I should just say, I'm not going to be sharing my music personally, but I do. We just talked. We do want some of our colleagues to share what they're up to. I think you'll be really interested in knowing. I've mostly stuck to my original plan of just arranging my own things. I've done a couple of things outside of that, and I've done a lot already, and they're all out there already. If you want to find out more, they're already on my publisher's website, Manhattan Beach. He's almost never fast about anything. He's got all my stuff up and ready and for sale and all ready to go. And so I'm amazed. So it's all there. My website and his website, it's all ready to go. So you can find out more just going there and going to the website, the Creative Repertoire website as well. So, thank you, Robert. And again, thank you all for being here. I can't wait to hear and see what some of you are up to.
Thanks so much, Frank. I wanted to just take a brief moment. Certainly, if you were interested, it would have been easy for you to have already visited our website. But let me just quickly show you. It's a very basic website of what we are, who we are. There's all of our names. And then a link to our Facebook group, which is our primary means of communication. And that's where any composer who wishes or any director who wishes can post anything in there about Adaptable Band. We're trying very hard to make sure that doesn't become a COVID-19 resource group. There's plenty of those. We want ours to be about music as much as possible. But then this is what we're most proud of, this resources for composers, what Frank mentioned. So if you haven't had a look at this yet, everybody, this is for composers who are interested in writing adaptable music. Here's a resource page for you with resources provided by some of our composers. And there will be more getting added to that. Right now there's 8 entries, and that will continue to grow. So if you have a second, jump over to our website and have a peek. And by all means, join our Facebook group if you haven't. There's already about 1,300 people in that group in just a couple of days. So we had almost 30 composers and arrangers sign up to speak tonight, which is an impossible number, obviously. So what we did was took the first 13 of those, and they will speak tonight and present their music along with members of the Creative Repertoire Initiative. And the remaining composers we will hear on another day. We'll set another one of these within a couple of weeks. And I think there's only so much information that we can absorb in Zoom. And hearing from 30 composers in one night would have been just overkill. And I sense that people would either zone out or log off. So we're gonna do fewer people. So I want to jump right in. Actually, before I do that, do any of my colleagues from CRI want to add anything at this point before we start with our first composer? Okay, hearing none, we will jump in. So our first composer is Ian Hardiman. Ian, are you with us?
Yes.
Okay, Ian, the floor is yours. You have 3 minutes.
Okay. So this was something that I've been thinking of given the demands, and more so than just finding something that works, I wanted to find something that could help make music truly. Since a lot of this kind of conversation of what will the classroom look like, what will certain things look like, how can we really adapt, we have to adapt what music really can start to look like. So I can't share my screen, unfortunately. I'm using my phone as a webcam, but I do have these small flashcards where I drew graphics. The piece is very graphics based, and
everyone, if you go to speaker view, you'll be able to see Ian large, and you might be able to see those cards a little bit better. Go ahead.
And Ian, you can share any documents on the chat if you'd like as well.
Okay. So the piece, which I've titled Combined Effort, uses 4-line staff similar to percussive writing that 1 to any number of players can look at. And the reason why I chose that is because it then becomes somewhat of a game between performers and music. There are 4 lines which can divide the instrument into 4 different octave ranges at the discretion of the performer or performers. And what's important is that the contour is maintained, even if there's a little bit of tonal variance. It can be controlled or used in any capacity. So this is a good opportunity for people to, okay, maybe everyone has the note A in different octaves, and let's say we have 6 people, let's put our lowest voices just reading this one line, or it can be a similar kind of maze-like effort to really early Baroque music where the lines are shifted and broken up by 2 performers. Yet I wanted something a little more involved too, so I invented a note system. So it might be a little reversed, but they follow traditional note head idioms where a regular note is just your regular note head oval that we've seen. But if there is a square, that means that the note can be held to any length. If there is an X, that is a de-emphasized note, which could be a key click, softer dynamic, or just any way which the general tapestry can come down. And then a triangle is emphasized, so more of the opposite. But with an emphasized note, I would say you could also consider range as an option. Say that you're on the bottom line and you're playing a middle C, that emphasized note can take you down to an octave below for dramatic effect. And to finally put all these rules to rest, I've invented a schematic where you see it starts at square note head equals 0%, meaning that there are no note heads that have a square. Then it moves to 20%, and these percentiles are more just for reference. So even
Ian,
though the notes...
About 10 seconds, Ian.
Okay. And it continues to where it has 100%. But 100 means that every time that you see the note head, it plays. It doesn't mean you play 100% of the time that particular effect.
Thank you, Ian.
Title? You have a title yet?
It's called combined effort.
Any questions for Ian? If you have one, just go ahead and unmute your microphone and ask. Okay, I will be dropping into the chat an Excel document that has all of the composers' names, email addresses, websites, and an explanation of their adaptable music. So don't feel like you have to write anything down, but you'll have all of their contact information. Ian, thanks so much for being with us. Bravo.
Thank you.
Next, we have Daniel. Is it Buchan, Daniel?
Yes, that is right.
Welcome, Daniel. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you all very much for allowing me to speak tonight. I really appreciate it. One of the things that I have been thinking about since the pandemic has started has been much along the same lines as the beginning of this call and the reasoning behind the Creative Repertoire Initiative. But given the events of just much of the social upheaval that has been caused by the unjust deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and so many other African Americans in this country, it's got me thinking about how can the music that I produce now not only be a benefit to music educators, but also to create a conversation space for issues like social justice and representation in the art music world that we all live in. And so I have been researching several composers of the past that include composers like Joseph Ballon de Saint-Georges, Juan Garcia de Cespedes, and Thomas Wiggins to create arrangements of their music to showcase that there are composers of the past of all sorts of time periods that can be accessible, relatable, and spark conversations about not just musical ideas, but representation ideas in the art music world. And so these arrangements that I'm working on, there are going to be two versions. One that is for flex/adaptable band, and one that's more catered towards string orchestra, so that you have two different options depending on the group you have. And I'm looking up ways to get that available onto my website. But the ultimate goal of this is to create these arrangements so that educators and students can see that music of all time periods has existed by composers of multiple backgrounds, and that they have created an important impact on the art music world.
Thank you, Daniel. Do we have any questions for Daniel? Okay, I have one. About how soon do you think your first arrangement will be done?
Well, most of these are actually fairly close to getting done. Now it's just a more of the nitpicky process of getting the scores formatted and making everything look nice and polished. But yeah, all three of these in both forms are going to be finished pretty soon. I just got to figure out a way how to distribute them.
Wonderful. And when I drop this Excel document into the chat, everybody, you'll see how you can get in touch with Daniel. You'll sell these on your website. Is that what you said?
Yeah, that's the idea.
Wonderful. Thanks for your important contributions, Daniel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'd like to ask Alex Shapiro, one of our Creative Repertoire Initiative composers, to speak next about the work that she's been doing. And we'll work our CRI composers in throughout the session. Alex?
Yeah, hi everybody. This is really exciting. I love this turnout. This is awesome. And we're going to probably do this again, as you guys know. I want to just encourage anybody who is doing electroacoustic work. This is the time, man. This is the time when it is particularly helpful, because you've got, if we have, students in the fall and beyond who are going to be working from home, click track, a track, something they can play against, something they can play their instrument and record, something they can send in and share with other people. It's magic. And so what I've done, I put up on the CRI website on the resources page with my colleagues' stuff, and it's ever growing. There's going to be so many more templates offered. But one of the things I put up early on is something called an electroacoustic cell passage idea. And really quickly, I'm just going to give you the recipe, and you can download it on the from the site. Determine a duration and a tempo and a meter. Record an interesting audio drone, something pretty basic, but it can shift tonal centers a few times and give everybody, a basis, a ground zero for their pitch and intonation. Compose several contrasting and complementary cell passages that are going to sound good on top of each other, separately and together in any random combination. Create a couple of different iterations of each passage with different dynamic and articulations marking, and add a wildcard cell for improvisation. Add another wildcard cell for improvisation, and another one for tacit. That's really important too, because you don't want everybody, too dense with each other, right? Everybody on top of each other. So you mix down the drone track with a tempo click. You offer those 2 or 3 tempo versions so that depending on the skill set level, there are those choices, and away you go. It's basically a 1 or 2 page score, if you will. If there is no score, it's basically just a part. Everybody has. It's available in every clef and every transposition. So you just grab and go. It's like takeout, and it should be interesting. It'll never be the same piece twice, because everybody's choices are going to be different. But I think this might be a very viable thing. And again, the recipe is up on the Creative Repertoire Initiative resource webpage.
Thank you so much, Alex. Any questions for Alex? Okay, I see a question in the chat. I'm sorry, is that question for, it is for Alex?
If time to answer, Alex, can you reference some places in your own music where we can see examples? Not quite of this. I am writing a piece this summer that will be based on this recipe. But drone stuff would be something like rock music is a piece of mine written for young students. That's a grade 2.5. And it's based on a drone that actually doesn't change chords, but it is very aleatoric and minimalist. So you can take a look at rock music. Yeah.
Thank you for that question, Joshua. Any other questions for Alex? Okay, let's move on. Next is Joe Samuel. Joe, are you with us?
I am here. Good evening, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Sure can. Go right ahead,
All
Joe.
right.
The floor is
So
yours.
almost nobody on this site knows me, but I was a military musician for 8 years, and now I'm in the Army Reserves. I actually studied composition with James Seiler, who you'll hear from in a little bit, and one of my inspirations was Major Scott McKenzie, who you'll also hear from later tonight. But in the Army Reserves, writing flex music is a standard because you never know. From one week, we meet 1 weekend a month when we make music together, and we never know who's going to be there and what instruments we'll have. So I've written several pieces in the past that can be played by different types of ensembles. And then just recently, we were at one of the protests in San Antonio for the horrific death of George Floyd. And afterwards, my wife said to me, she said, what are you going to do musically? Kind of like what Daniel was saying. What are you going to do musically to say something about this? So So I got to thinking, and I can write the songs of my people. I'm Indian American, but I can't write the songs of your people. But I can sing your songs, and you can sing mine, and we can do that together. So I thought, well, as a composer, my voice, the way I sing, is to write music. So the last few weeks I've spent digging around in old African American spirituals and songs, and I found several. I found a bunch that are just fantastic. There's a resource called the Old Plantation Hymnal, where somebody actually went and back in the 1800s notated all of the songs that that a lot of the slaves were singing in their churches. But I found some songs, and I'm putting them together into uh, a piece that is kind of a suite of 3 or 4 pieces. 3 of them are kind of in the works right now. Can be played by 6 to 8 or 9 instruments, and I want to have one of the things that we can do is we can have the audience participate. They can sing along. The audience can be the percussion, and that way we can actually have more people involved. And that the piece was called "Songs of Solidarity," um, and it's kind of a fusion of a classical jazzish style along with these African American spiritual songs that I found, and I think it's going to be kind of an exciting thing and help students to make music that really means something to this world that we live in right now. I think you're muted. Are you muted?
I am, so I'll say everything you just said again. Sorry about that. I said, Joe, thank you so much for that. Do we have any questions for Joe? Joe, when might we expect the work to be ready?
That one I'm shooting for 2 to 3 weeks, and also right now I don't have a website up, but that'll also be coming in the next couple of weeks. So I'll have a link to that on the Facebook page, and when that's available, I'll just put it out there. I don't want to make money off of this. Whatever the music sells for is going to be donated to the Equal Justice Initiative. So I mean that's the way I want to contribute to this, to what's going on in our world right now.
Thank you for your generosity, Joe. The world needs that right now. Thank you so much. All right, any other questions for Joe or any questions for Joe? Ellie has a question.
I don't have a question. I was just going to point out one in the chat that someone asked. They were just curious what the difficulty ranges of this music is going to be if composers can include that. That might be helpful.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, thanks for that, Mark. Joe, how difficult will your piece be grade level wise?
That's another thing about adaptable music. It will be able to be played at a 3 to 4 range. There's elements, solos, ad lib, stuff like that that can take it into the 4 range, or if you want to just play it as written, it'll be a 3.
Wonderful.
3, 3.5.
Thank you for that. And Alex has dropped hers into the chat, and Ian and Daniel, if you guys want to comment anything in the chat about your difficulty level for your pieces, feel free to go right ahead. Joe, thanks so much for your contribution. Much appreciated. Thank you so much. Next, we have Tyler Mazzone or Mazzoni. Tyler, you can help us. Thanks.
Yeah, you pronounced it right the first time, so it's good. Not everyone gets it right off the bat, but on my piece, I'm taking the same idea as Dr. Kelly, where I'm taking one of my pieces and adapting it for 4 voices. And this is going to be a grade 3 piece, so it's perfect for like late middle school, early high school levels, although it can be played by anyone past that really. And the aim of the piece is just to work on musicality, because one of my strengths as a composer is writing chorale-like melodies and things like that, and I'm a very contrapuntal composer. So I decided I'm going to take advantage of this easier piece and make it into an adaptable work where, like, I'm using Dr. Kelly's template for this, where it's like the 4 voices for every single transposition and bass clef. And you can mix and match and really customize the piece to give it different flavors every time. and the recording of the original band instrumentation is up on my website. But like you don't have to feel like you need to adhere to the band version that I have up on my website and on my SoundCloud. It's just to give you a taste of what the piece is about. And it's a slow piece. It's nothing technical. It's very lyrical. And I'll be doing some other works, not just this one, but I'll have some other works coming because I have some ideas for like very different things, like maybe some aleatory things. And it's like a time to experiment, you know? But that book Closure is going to be the first one that comes from me, and it'll be on my website. So I have to figure out a way to distribute it, probably through Chic Music Press Plus, or whatever it's called. So that's all I have for you. It's just
Awesome, Tyler. Thank you so much. Any questions for Tyler?
Yeah. Just want to say, having met Tyler in Washington, D.C. about a year ago or so,
it was exactly
it's wonderful
a year.
to see you here. And I just want to say to everyone, Tyler is a really wonderful composer, and it's a pleasure to have you here, Tyler.
Well, there's an endorsement for you, Tyler.
Thank you. Thank you so much for letting me speak.
Yeah, I didn't think you were that great, Tyler, but I'll give you a, no, I'm just kidding. I was with Tyler that last summer as well. Yeah.
That's
absolutely.
right. You were there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tyler. Next is Jeff Connor. And Jeff may be a composer. I've known Jeff for 25 years as trumpet player in the Boston Brass and the founder of Boston Brass. And Jeff's here to talk about some flex arrangements that they've created with Boston Brass. And I haven't said this, but any of you can feel free to share the screen and show any of the materials you have. So let's welcome Jeff Connor. Jeff, good to see you, man.
Well, thank you so much, Bob. I'd like to thank you and all the amazing composers at the Creative Repertoire Initiative for allowing Boston Brass to share with everyone the Boston Brass flex arrangements for high school band. For the first time ever, students will have the opportunity to play and perform the music of Boston Brass with Boston Brass. These flex arrangements will help your students express their own musical independence through the creation of chamber groups for any type of instrumentation. The music also works perfectly for small ensembles with as few as 5 players or whatever size ensemble you're allowed. The Boston Brass flex arrangements can be performed with conductor and with or without the recordings that are part of the package. You're also able to connect with your listeners with pre-written program notes and introductions for your students to present. Best of all, you get to play along with Boston Brass's coveted custom arrangements available here for the first time ever for all instrument types. And I'll put up a photo. The package contains everything needed for a mini recital or a full concert. And included in the package are 5 separate arrangements of different styles, uniquely arranged for flexibility of group size, original Boston Brass recording of each piece with click track introduction, downloadable PDF scores and grade 4 parts for each selection, including percussion and piano. The band parts and arrangements are done by ASCAP composer Rick DeYoung. There are program notes for student introductions and rehearsal suggestions for each selection. And also we are including a digital copy of the new Boston Brass album, Blues for Sam. These will be available August 15th. And if you want to reserve your copy of the Boston Brass Flex arrangements, you can email bostonbrass.flex@gmail.com. And this is one of the tunes. There's a clarinet part for part 1. You can see that was the score. And then that's the email if you're interested.
Wonderful. And I'll reiterate again, I'm going to put an Excel document in the chat with all of the contact information for every composer that speaks tonight and all the ones that are speaking at our next session as well. Jeff, I have a question. Are the percussion parts optional or required?
Optional.
All of them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
All of them.
Wonderful. That's great to know. Any other questions for Jeff? What a great resource. Okay, Jeff, thank you so much for that. Wonderful.
Thanks, Bob.
Thanks for the
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next, we have Erica Spano. Erica, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thank you for the opportunity. I just wanted to share, I'll share my screen, just a couple of pieces that I'm hoping to contribute to this effort. So you can find all of these pieces on ericaspano.com. And I just updated my website today with Flexible Ensemble, so you can be directed there. I have 3 works in progress right now. The first one that that's really close is what I'm calling Mary Shelley Meets Frankenstein, the Frankenstein edition. So my hope is that this will be a piece for 4 or more players, approximately a grade 4 or 5, with flexible instrumentation and optional percussion. And it's sort of an amalgamation of the original saxophone quartet and the more fully realized concert band version I did this year. And my hope is that 4 or more players will be able to sort of piece together their own version of this Frankenstein piece. And so I feel like that conceptually works really well. That's the hope anyway. So I hope some monsters will be built out of this music this coming year. I have 2 other pieces that I'm adapting of mine. One is Springtime Ride, which will be about a grade 2-3 that I think will be very performable by a lot of different levels. For 5 parts plus percussion, adapted from Springtime Ride for concert band. And the other contribution I'm hoping to make will be an adaptation of Steampunk Suite. Actually, the original version of that was a chamber version called Steampunk Scenes. And so my plan for that is that will also be about a grade 5. So good for, I think, I teach in a small college, and I think this will work well for those kinds of programs or for advanced high school players. And that will be for 6 winter string players, 1 keyboard, and 1 to 3 percussion. I'm not sure where that's going to end up. But these are in various states of completion, and I believe that these will all be done near the end of July for people to look at for potentially considering for the fall. So thank you so much.
Wonderful, Erica. Thank you so much for that. Erica, I have a question for you unrelated to your flexible music for just a second. Your piece, The Haunted Carousel, is so wonderful and so creative. Can it be performed with an actual theremin, or is it mostly for electronic theremin?
Yes, you absolutely can perform it with a theremin. I've had a player do that, but I've also had people write me and say that it's way harder to do that way.
Yeah, well,
but
exactly.
Yes, I've done it with theremin before.
If you don't know this piece, it's what is it, Erica? Grade 3, 2+3?
Yeah, it's a grade 3.
Yeah, called The Haunted Carousel for concert band and theremin. Typically performed on an iPad with I guess a simple app. There must be a theremin app that's actually in tune all the time. But not to detract from your other work, I just wanted to ask you that question, and thank you for writing that really unique piece. Any question about Erica's flex music at all? And I want to encourage each composer, as soon as you get things done, go right into the CRI Facebook group and let everybody know about it. That's why that's there. And that's, you can get the word out through your own website, but you'll get about, hopefully by that time, 2,000 people in the next month or so that will have immediate eyes on it. Okay, Erica, thank you so much for your contribution. We appreciate it. Thanks. Next, I want to turn to my CRI colleague, John Mackey. John, what have you been up to?
So I will preface this by saying that the stuff I'm doing is not that interesting. Everything I've done is basically building on the tools that the other members of CRI have come up with. So I'm going to have, I think, 5 pieces probably in the works for this. 3 are adaptations. I'm doing Strange Humors, which I'm going to release. There's currently a version for clarinet quartet and a version for sax quartet. I'm going to release a version that just has every part basically in every instrument key, so that you could do it with a brass quartet or whatever. And then Sheltering Sky is being adapted for 4-part. This is not full flex adaptation, meaning it really does have to be like an SATB type of ensemble to play it. Pat Dunnigan is working on that with me. Thank you, Pat. I think you're here, so thank you, Pat. He's also going to work on This Cruel Moon. That would be for 5-part flexible or adaptable scoring. And then there's a piece that I wrote for my mother when I was 18 that's like a minute and a half long that I managed to work with any 4 instruments. I'm not sure I'm going to release it. It was more of an experiment to see if I could figure out how to work in this kind of process. And then there are 2 brand new pieces that I'm writing from scratch. And I thought I would show you what I have to date on each of those 2. This is, I will tell you, frankly, terrifying. Not even any of the members of CRI other than Frank, because I had to send him one of them to make sure I hadn't plagiarized it from Frank. So apparently I haven't, but it's close. And then there's this other one that just kind of sounds like me, I think. It sounds like, it's sort of like Foundry, a little bit like Xerxes. It's kind of like old school Mackie, just like, rock-ish sort of thing. And again, I haven't even shared this with our little group. So I have never shared a screen or anything. So this will be very embarrassing and you'll all get to mock me.
Make sure you share your sound on the
Thank
bottom
you.
when you do it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So I'll first show this piece called Weird Flex, but okay. So this is the one that's sort of Foundry-ish in its tone. So this is a pretty straightforward 4-part, plus you'll have to have a percussionist. And I'll just play like the first 90 seconds of this. So hopefully this will come up in a second. You see that, I hope? Yes, thumbs up, yes?
Yep.
Okay. And I'll just play the beginning of Weird Flex, but okay. So that is that one. And then the other one is Let Me Be Frank With You. So this is the one that is clearly stolen from Frank to Kelly. So Frank was very gracious and said I didn't quite steal it, but I think it's close.
But John, I'm thinking of writing a piece and I'm going to call it Frankie and Johnny.
Oh, I love that. Oh, that's adorable. Oh, someone suggested you'd call it Dear John. That would be cute too.
Yeah, we have to be careful with anything with the name John.
Yeah. Can you see Let Me Be Frank With You on your screen now? Is that there? Okay. So I'll play a little bit of this one. This one is sort of, like I said, to Kelly-ish, sort of I don't know, kind of pseudo bluegrassy something or other. So that's this one. So that's what that does. So those will each probably be like grade 4, I think, probably 3 or 4, maybe 3. I'm not even sure. You guys are smarter than I am. was Brian holding up a 1? I hope it's a grade 1. Brian says it's a grade 1. Oh no, he doesn't say it's. Oh, it's a 4. Okay, it's a 4.
That was an up arrow. That was an up arrow.
Oh, okay. So maybe that's 4. And then, yeah, I mentioned the other ones will be adapted chamber pieces. So with Strange Humors, where as a, I'll just make it in all the keys, and there'll just be one version of the chamber ensemble version of Strange Humors moving forward. So yeah, that's the deal. So thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you. Any questions for John? The floor is open for questions. Okay, moving on. Scott McKenzie, you are next. Welcome, Scott. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. So we're the lucky ones that have to follow Mackie. That's fantastic. Great. Anyway, thank you for the opportunity. Good evening, everyone. My name's Scott McKenzie. I'm a band officer in the U.S. Army. And
I'm Jimmy McKenzie. I'm a recent graduate from James Madison University with a degree in music education. Currently looking for a job.
Yes, so anyone who's hiring, get him out of my house. That would be awesome. But in the meantime, we're enjoying doing this father-son project. And I get probably the best thing to do is to explain what it isn't. This is not an ensemble piece that we're working on. It's not something, it's not a flex instrumentation thing, but we think it's a resource that would certainly have a market and an interest for directors, through the current situation and maybe beyond. So I'll let Jimmy intro it.
So what we have written is a series, or we are continuing to write as well, is a series of creative etudes, otherwise known as Creatudes.
I wish I'd thought of that.
So with these creative etudes, they're really attempting to bring out a student's performance creativity in the process. So essentially what we have now is about 40 different skeletons of pieces where that we just have the notes on the page. We're going to let the students put in the dynamics, rises and falls in character, putting in accents and articulations, slurs, tonguing techniques, pretty much anything that is not just this is where each note on the staff goes. We're going to let the students come up with as they go.
So I will attempt to share our screen. And how do I do this?
Share screen.
Oh, yes. Yes. Yes, I will allow that. Oh. Thank God my son is here to help me. You will not? Oh. Okay. So we brought the chat to a screeching halt. Well, anyway. Well, for example, we're trying to write etudes. They're single line etudes that are melodic in nature, and we're trying to be very, very not generic, but giving the musician, the student, as much freedom as possible. So if they have only a melodic line and they have nothing else, we're trying to write musical lines that would work at a fast or slow tempo, whether you staccato or where you might put accents. I think most etude books, you get a technical etude, something with a lot of scales and arpeggios. That's a common practice routine, right? Is to fudge with the articulation to do that. But when etudes go into the more expressive, they tend to be more prescriptive. They all have the slurs and the tempo markings. So even on etudes that we, in our minds anyway, are slower, we're resisting the urge of putting anything there to help the student out and allow the student to make it up, or to fill in the gaps. And so what we think would be really, what would delight us more, what wouldn't delight us more would be if you gave the same etude to a number of different kids and say, have at it, live with it for a few days, and then come back and then have students share either performances or recordings, and let them be amazed at how many different ways that you could interpret the same framework, if you will. So I'm sorry we couldn't share our screen, but in the resources that Bob is sending out. We have a sample page. These first ones that we're working on are like, we think they're high school level. So slow and fast might differ in like from grade 4 to 6. But if there's interest for this, then we see no reason why you couldn't write ones for beginner to intermediate level students also. Yeah, check it out and give us all the feedback. And if you think it's a great idea, great. If you think it's a lousy idea, we'll take that too.
Wonderful. And by all means, please throw it in the Facebook group as well. You know, you weren't able to share the screen, and that's okay. Just throw it in the Facebook group, and you can throw a page of the music in there. Any questions for the Mackenzies?
No, and I think they might be able to upload like one page into the chat too. Could they do that, or is it better on the Facebook group?
Oh, either way. Yeah, you guys can try to do that. Either way.
We are technologically advanced, and we will figure that out.
Okay.
We're seeing a lot of positive comments in the chat about this. So bravo, guys. Congratulations. Wonderful. Thanks for that contribution. Thank you so much. Okay, moving on. James Seiler is next. Hey, James, thanks for being with us. The floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Sure can.
Okay. I just went ahead and took some older works that I thought were adaptable. So I went back through mostly chamber works and some choral pieces. One was I wrote a string quartet years ago, and one of the movements turned out to be a fusion of bluegrass music and bebop. So it's kind of a hybrid. And it adapted itself well for a 5-part flex piece. So that one's blue bop. It's advanced, about a grade 5, but it's short. It's about 4 minutes. The next one was a choral. You know, it's interesting. Not all music, at least for me, adapts to this format. I started a piece about a month ago thinking it would work well for a 4-part flex piece, and I got halfway through it and it just wasn't. Things didn't fit. And so I scrapped it and moved on to another one. So the second piece is The Road Not Taken, which is a pre-existing choral of mine, lyrical, warm, kind of a grade 3-4, about 5 minutes. And that one did adapt itself well for the 4-part flex. Then the third one is from a wind trio I wrote a few years ago, Scintilla. It's quick, it's twitchy, it's nervous, it's metallic. And interestingly, it's for 3 treble clef wind instruments, and it seemed to adapt itself okay without a bass clef part. Made it very bright and metallic. That's about a grade 5, and that'll be about 5 minutes. And the last one is I went and arranged an old American song. It's a favorite of mine, "Good Time" or "Hard Times Come Again No More," which is an old classic American song. Kept it real simple. It's probably a grade 2-3. It's about 3.5 minutes. No lyrics, but it's a great melody from an old kind of hymn-like American style. These pieces they're ready to go, but they'll be on the website probably July 1. So I've still got a couple weeks to kind of clarify everything.
Wonderful, James. Thank you so much. Any questions for James about his pieces?
I have a quick one.
Yeah, Frank.
Hi, James.
Hi, it's good to meet you finally.
Yes. Just very curious, you mentioned that this piece that you just put up, it worked without a bass part in all treble clef, right?
Yeah.
Does that mean that you could knock it down an octave and it could work for all trombones without any treble parts?
I would be curious to hear that. I think it would.
Because
and you know what I ended up doing is I included a lot of octaves in the piece. For me, I was having a hard time with all 4 of these, squeezing the ranges, into a compressed world. So for what it's worth, I put in my score a note to the conductors, feel free to alternate octaves, use your good judgment. This isn't a perfect orchestrated medium, but it's an alternative.
That's a really good way of putting it. It's not perfect. We're having to make compromises. But I was just curious. You're really getting to when you say the compression, that's really getting to the essence of this approach I've kind of devised for myself, and it's working for my lower level grade pieces, where everything's compressed, so that it works throughout the ensemble in various ways. So that's why I was curious to know whether it would work in your case. But thank you, James.
I think so.
Yeah,
I have
that's
a question
cool.
for Jim, if you don't mind.
Please.
Jim, do you think something like Wuxing might work well for this flex instrumentation? Because I'm thinking about pieces that would enable us to also have guest artists along, and in the case of Wuxing, percussionists in there, obviously. But if I remember correctly, that's a piece that I think would work well to that scalability, to that adaptability. Might you have any plans to maybe look at that, or even something like the country bandstand that you did a couple of years ago?
I never thought of that. That for those who aren't aware, that's a piece for two percussion and band. There might be some balance problems if you go down to maybe 12 winds. That's a good point. I need to go back and look at the score. For what I did is I just went through all my pieces and tried to see what pieces I thought were adaptable to this format. And for me, that came to mostly 4 and 5 part music, which is chamber works and chorals. I've written a lot of choral music, so I had a lot to choose from. But that's a good point. I'll go back and check.
Thanks for that question, Nick. And James, thanks for doing so many of these arrangements for us. You're a fabulous composer, and you've written generously for Winds already. Thanks for continuing to take an interest in us. Appreciate that a lot. Everyone, thanks to James. Thank you, man.
Thank you.
Next, we have Martha Mook. Martha, thanks for joining us and for writing something. We'd love to hear what you're up to.
Yeah, hi, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. So I may be the black sheep in the family here. I'm a string player, violist, electric violist, composer, improviser, but I have written for band. But my approach to this whole thing is a little bit different. So you're calling it adaptable music, and so I'm actually calling it ensemble fluid. I think that's a more politically correct term, but and it's not a new concept. So I don't have a particular work that I have that I'm showing you, although I'm working on one that I'm actually dedicating to Alex Shapiro. But I'm looking at this whole time frame, this new paradigm, as an opportunity to approach things differently. So rather than bringing the same things and bringing set pieces for the students to play, take this as an opportunity, because they're all in strange territory, just like we all are too. And some of them are going to be still at home, and some of them are going to be in different places. And so I think we really have to be cognizant of that and adapt to how they're able, and bring them in and make them part of the adventure and part of the creative process. So, it was a big learning curve for me to learn how to do live streaming and doing workshops and things. And you see, I have some colorful lights and just try to make it a little more creative in my own space. And I think that that might be also something that you can suggest that the students do, is also make up their own space. We don't know what's coming in the fall, so we need to be prepared for anything. And it's great that there's all these set pieces that are going on. As far as what I do a lot of working with students in the creative realm. So go in and work with them on different ways of approaching their instrument. I just did a residency at Frostburg State University in February and worked with their band. And I had them take apart their instruments and just play them in different ways. It was an opportunity to try something new, explore new sounds. And then I broke them up into smaller groups, and I had them work together to create their own pieces. And they actually performed them at a concert. And that's something you can do in this Zoom world, where if you've got, 30 kids on the screen, you can break them up into groups of 4 or 5 or 6. And so, and have them start to work with each other, exploring ideas, exploring sounds, ways that they can interact. And you as the teacher can also, you can pop in and see how they're doing. Probably some of you are using that. And when you're talking about whether it's flex or adaptable or fluid, it's an opportunity for them to listen in different ways, make it more multidimensional. So they're hearing things, maybe the same part is played, and it'll sound different because it's a different octave, or a woodwind is sounding different than a brass. So they're hearing differences in timbres and textures. And so the same piece might sound vastly different. And this is for everybody. So,
about 10 seconds, Martha, okay?
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen for a second because, like I said, this is not new stuff. This is my website, but I'm going to just go over a few other composers that exist that you may not know of. George Lewis is a composer still living, and he's written pieces that have descriptions on it, very much alive, and you can call him up and work with him. Pauline Oliveros, who passed away a few years ago, created Deep Listening, has these 4 meditations for orchestra. It can be for band, it can be for voices. Butch Morris, who passed away a few years ago, had a conduction workshop. Walter Thompson, where you teaching the students different ways of following a conductor. So if anybody wants to, ask me questions or have consultations after this, you've got my information there. And that's basically what I wanted to say.
Thank you very much, Martha. I want to mention one other piece by Pauline Oliveros. For anybody who's a director, ensemble director, she's written a piece specifically to be performed on a college campus outside. What a great opportunity for us in COVID-19 times to do that piece. Go to her website. It's called, it's Bonfire, Bonnfeier, Bonfire, Pauline Oliveros. And the instructions are to perform it outside on a college campus. So if anybody's really in a bind, or even if you're not in a bind, what a great opportunity to perform a really cool piece with the environment as part of the piece. That's something else by Pauline Oliveros. Any questions for Martha?
You can always reach me on through my website. So,
Martha, thank you so much for taking us on a slightly different path. Much appreciated. And I should mention, everyone, in case you didn't notice, I dropped the Excel document into the chat quite a little bit ago. It's in there. And if you click the 3 buttons, you can save the chat. And if you click on that document, you can open it. Though for just out of respect for everybody who's still talking, maybe do that afterwards, just so everyone gets your attention. Okay, thank you so much, Martha. Next, I want to move over to CRI composer Jen Jolly. I think Jen just wanted a minute to talk about a couple of things that she's doing. Jen?
Yeah, hi everyone. First of all, I'm kind of fangirling after going after Martha Mook, but I'm glad she brought up what she did, because I too think that even though we are in COVID times and it's terrible, I think this is an opportunity for students to do some real-time composing. And so one of the first pieces I actually adapted, I wrote as a grad student, and it was initially an electronic piece where I worked with a bass clarinetist named Rebecca Daynard, and she improvised on 5 pentatonic scales, recorded herself, and then occasionally I'd process that, and then she would improvise again while I decide what cell she did. So I'm gonna go ahead and share the screen. I did make this for Flex Band or Adaptable Band. I think if you use Flex Band, you have to use the Flex emoji. That's what I've been personally doing. So this is from the series, I call it Sounds from the Grey Goo, because it was an electronic piece, and the Grey Goo is like if you had a whole bunch of micro robots reproducing without a stop code, you were in a lot of trouble. But anyway, enough about that. What I had the most fun about this piece, besides bringing it up again, was that I think there's an opportunity to have conductors and students kind of shape the piece themselves. In the original version, you'd have to go cell by cell in order. And here I'm like, you know what, you never know what your ensemble is going to be. So as a group, we can decide who's playing when, as long as all cells are played, etc., and stuff like that. So this is what it looks like. I have 4 Japanese pentatonic scales because I think you really can't go wrong with pentatonic scales, but I did add a tiny bit of dissonance to them because you need some dissonance in your life. And basically you would split your group, however many numbers, into 2 groups. You have part 1 and part 2. And a player gets to decide with the rhythm that's given to them which scale they want. So let's say like for cell number 1, they want to play this scale. And for cell number 2, they could jump here, or they could play the same scale, or they could even stay on the same note. Let's say if someone's really scared to improvise, there's nothing wrong with improvising on your singular note. I would also say that part 2 has opportunities for some aleatoric, like fun music-y things. So this is the C score. I have parts for kind of everybody, including strings, hence the harmonic glissando, or you can blow air, or you could key slaps. This iteration has not been performed before, and I would say that it'll have a different result every time. I think it would work really well outdoors, and especially if they get to have space in between and communicate with each other. I do have this on my website already, and the recording I have is actually a whole bunch of clarinetists who did it a while ago. And in fact, the reason why I wanted to attack this one first was because same clarinetist from a long time ago in my grad school years was like, I want to do this again. I'm like, well, let me clean up the score for you. So I decided to clean up the score for everybody else. That being said, I will see if, well, if I write a new piece, but I definitely have plans on starting with my grade 1 stuff and moving my way up.
Wonderful, Jen. What an interesting concept. Any questions for Jen? Conductors or composers?
I have a question. This
Yes.
isn't too directly related to the piece's content, but I started thinking about what if in this scenario, say a group wants to perform it, but suddenly everyone's back inside and now there's that lack of, personal interaction. I kind of was thinking, should directors, composers alike be thinking about implementing kind of pedagogical things regarding audio setup and just making it so that music making from afar doesn't have so many technical limitations in the future?
Are you talking about specifically like, what do you mean by back inside? Do you mean like Zoom?
Yes.
Zoom? I think that's all part of the creative process. I think I think it would be a great idea to kind of like talk like a conductor would. I think this is a great learning opportunity where like the students, the conductor could ask the students, like, if you were to perform this piece and shape it, like, how would you collectively do it? They are making compositional decisions. And even though there are notes on the page, I'm really excited that everybody gets to learn about composing too. And I think that's something that's actually required with like NASM guidelines and with like middle schools and high schools, is to learning how to compose. And so I guess what I'm saying is, sure, you can think about that, but I think there's, you can like assign it, or maybe everybody decide, or you know what I'm saying? I think there's a lot of joy and flexibility in figuring out how to make their piece theirs and not necessarily mine. Like, I'm kind of giving the composing control to everyone who wants to perform this piece. And I'm really giddy about that, to be honest.
Jen, there was one other question here from, I think it says Verna. Could I ask the kids to create the rhythms?
I think at the end of my program note, I said, you know what, sure. I think I even said like, actually I have to remember what I wrote. I said, oh yes, I said, okay, so now for the fun part, a composer, conductor, performer can decide how they want to shape this piece. Not everyone or every instrument has to play all the time. Maybe there's a leader who looks or points at people to play. Maybe there are colored flashcards involved. Maybe the pitches are made up and the ranges don't matter. And I said, okay, please just go from low to high. The piece is yours, have fun. So on that note, because I didn't say anything on the rhythm, sure. Like, just have fun with it. I think that's kind of the point, yeah? So you have my blessing. It's recorded, so have at it.
Thank you so much, Jen. Just quickly before we move to Robert Langenfield, Robert, just if you can get ready. Someone asked about price point, and I think the price points are so different that there's no general statement that can be made about that. Just go to each composer's website or ask each composer, and I think it may vary widely enough that it's not of any value to talk about generically, and we don't have the time to talk about each one specifically. So sorry, I can't be any better about answering that. We're trying to finish up by within the next 20 minutes, if at all possible. So Robert Langenfield, the floor is yours for 3 minutes. Go right ahead.
Thank you. So kind of, hi, first of all, some of you may know me as the guy who writes all of Stephen Bryant's phone apps for his pieces. Yeah, so I'm that guy. So I'm a programmer by trade, and I do composing on the side kind of a thing. But one of the interesting ways I thought I could help tackle this problem was kind of building off Alex's idea of, cell music. And that got me thinking, cell phone. So for the last couple of weeks, I've been kind of working on a couple of pieces where I've rearranged Current in the Sky to be 6 to 8 players. I've rearranged 4 to be 4 players. But from an adaptable standpoint, what would be a better way than combining electroacoustical music with adaptable pieces, and then having the phone being the electronic part? And let me kind of elaborate a little bit. So basically, the app that I'm working on right now, it will have cell-like music that I'll be able to basically swap in and out really quickly, and different pieces with different backgrounds, and they don't have to match up. That's the beauty of the piece. It's the beauty of cell music. You don't need Ableton Live. You don't need big, loud, fancy speakers. Your phone speakers are plenty loud enough. Your iPad speakers are plenty loud enough. And the best part about this app is it will also record it so that if, with the permission, it'll actually get fed back to machine learning algorithm that will change the background. So this will be an ever-evolving piece. So as this app is out, the piece is going to adapt and evolve. And not only that, but then like the instrumentation can also evolve. So you want to be, if you want it all to be percussion-based, all for it. If you want it to be all wind-based, all for it. And it scales from anywhere from one single player with an iPad up to, however many you safely can feel on stage. And the only thing I'm waiting on right now is Apple to announce their switch from Intel to ARM chips and see how much that breaks the app before I try to push it out to the App Store. But the idea is to make sure like the music is free and readily available to any and all student performers. It'll range from grade 2 to, I think the hardest I had was like a grade 4-ish, give or take. And it'll be for them to perform and then to contribute to a bigger performance or their own individual performance as well. And so I'll have more details about that on my website in the coming months once Apple gets done breaking all my stuff. So
very cool, Robert. Wonderful. Any questions for him? Okay, man. I think we all look forward to seeing that. Thanks so much, and thanks for that really creative idea. Bravo, man. Next, Alex Eddington. Alex, the floor is yours for 3 minutes.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone. Thanks for having me. I've been just blown away by some of the ideas I've heard so far tonight, and it's made me completely rethink what I want to do in terms of responding to this challenge. But what I'm going to show you tonight is more in the kind of flex area. I am a composer and also currently a full-time high school music teacher. I moved from school to school, so over the years I've taught all sorts of things: band, strings, vocal, guitar, keyboard, and I often try to get students composing and making creative decisions. So I love the ideas that other composers have brought up. Thank you so much for that. I'm going to just share my screen here. So some pieces I've had to make in the past have been for classes where I've had all sorts of instrumentation and experience levels mixed together. So here's one I made. This is not up on my website yet, but it just occurs to me I should put it up there. This is Heart and Soul, Some Assembly Required. So the idea is that everyone gets the same part with the building blocks of heart and soul. And I figure every music student...
Alex, I'm sorry to interrupt you. You're not sharing yet.
Oh, am I not?
No. You have to actually click.
Oh.
There's a second click. There you go.
Got it. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
There we go. So it's called Heart and Soul, Some Assembly Required. So I've got these different cells that students can work together in a chamber ensemble or the full band to put heart and soul together. I figure every student ever knows the song Heart and Soul. we performed it with not only the band, but with someone singing with the original lyrics, and that was pretty cool. I've also got some chamber music I've written, some of it for professional musicians, but that would work at a high school level, kind of grade 3, 4. So here's a march based on an old tune, Scottish tune, that I'm going to arrange just, for 5 parts and optional percussion. I've got a couple band pieces I wanted to share as well. So here's a kind of a grade 2-ish piece called Flight of the Hawks. I write a lot of programmatic music, and this is a piece I actually created collaboratively with students of a middle school concert band. So they came up with all these different ways to make red-tailed hawk sounds on their instruments. And I made a very coloristic band piece from that. It's got kind of a slow section where the hawks are soaring, and then a fast section where they're hunting. But taking another look at this, I think I could make it into a 4 or 5 part flex band piece with optional percussion. It's pretty much all written in kind of 4 like SATB voices anyway. So I'm going to revisit that piece and get that up on my website in the next couple weeks. Then I noticed people were asking earlier today for pieces that are at a higher level. So I have a piece kind of 4.5 level called Casa Loma Variations. If any of you have been to Toronto, we have an amazing kind of fake castle up on the hill called Casa Loma, and it has all these amazing rooms and secret passages. So I took an old tune from the year that the castle was built, which was 1911. And the tune's called Oh, What a Difference Since the Hydro Came, things that people were worried about in that time. And I made the theme sound like it's on theater organ, and then had a bunch of variations that represent moving through the rooms of this fake castle. It's a very strange house. So this is another one I'd like to arrange for kind of a flex band, probably 5 voices and percussion. Okay, so I'm going to get that up pretty soon. I appreciate those of you who were talking about string music tonight. I've written a number of things for strings that I'm revisiting now. So Fantasy on an East Coast Canadian folk song, originally for kind of mixed ability string ensemble, but beginner strings. So I'm going to arrange that for probably 4 parts. And I think having optional percussion is always a good idea. And finally, a piece called Watershed, which was commissioned by a Suzuki string school. So it's very violinistic right now. And it actually has a part for relative beginner and a part for relative expert. So like a teacher can play with their student. What I'm gonna do to this though, is just go back to the kind of musical elements of it that make the story. This is about a drop of water that comes from a melting glacier in the Columbia ice field, and it passes through the whole watershed through Canadian landscape until it goes to Hudson's Bay at the end. There's 7 movements. It's currently a duet, but I think I would remake this as almost like a little flex chamber ensemble that could even be a band or a string ensemble, and add again some optional percussion with all these movements. The other little thing I wanted to talk about is I have, starting last year, I've been wanting to do an annual consortium commission. So last year I had a number of choirs commission me to write a new piece for Remembrance Day that had a specific social justice theme. It was about refugee children, the struggles that they face. This year, just recently, in fact, inspired by what you're doing in your Creative Repertoire Initiative, I decided I would make this year's consortium for Adaptable Ensemble. However, having heard everyone's ideas tonight, I'm thinking about not just making it simple flex band, but maybe making each movement, because there will be many movements, have a different way of approaching it. Some could be aleatoric, some could be game pieces like Ian mentioned, and some could be straight up scored, 4-part and percussion. The theme is going to be human rights. And depending on how many commissioners I get, I will be setting as many articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights as come in. So each piece will be about 30 to 45 seconds. And you could have someone read that article of the Human Rights Declaration alongside of the performance. So again, there's an opportunity there for an electroacoustic part, like a CD or MP3 part to play along with it as well. So this is still in development. I just posted it today on my website, and I'm definitely open to ideas about what people are looking for. If they're interested in contacting me. So I have a website, it's alexeddington.com, and a lot of the pieces I mentioned are here, and those I didn't mention are going to be appearing pretty soon. So again, thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Alex. Any questions for Alex? There's certainly quite a variety of works there, and a lot of great stuff on the horizon. If you stop sharing, Alex, we'll be able to see each other.
Oh, I'm sorry, stop share. There we go.
Perfect, yep. Any questions for Alex? Wonderful. Thanks for your contributions, Alex. We have two composers left, Catherine Woodard and Steve Danu. But I want to mention one thing before we hear from them. Composers, at the very end of the session, I'm going to give you the opportunity to drop anything into the chat that you want to about any of your music. Composers who have spoken, composers who haven't spoken. If you can hold off just right till the end, we're almost there. You'll have the opportunity to do that. Also, I see a lot of stuff in the chat about other sort of adaptable pieces or pieces that with non-specified instrumentation. The CBDNA COVID-19 Response Committee wrote a document, and in that document, in one of the appendices that I'm sharing here, is works for variable or non-specified ensemble. And some of those pieces that you were mentioning in the chat are in here. This is just a jumping off spot. There are many, many more than this. So these might serve as some pieces as well. This document lives on the CBDNA website, cbdna.org. So if you're looking for pieces with non-specified ensemble or variable instrumentation, there's another resource for you. Okay, next we have just two more composers, everyone. Catherine Woodard. Catherine, are you with us?
Yes, thank you.
Hi, Catherine. The floor is yours for 3 minutes. Enjoy.
Thank you so much. This is a wonderful opportunity for me to talk about this one specific piece. I'm going to start by sharing this website in the chat that's different than my personal website, where I've put up a whole lot of links to information about this piece and composer because I am the arranger of it. If I can share screen. So this is that website, and over here on the right under promotions is where you'll find the links to information about the Ottoman composer Leyla Saz and her Victory March, which was composed in 1908 to commemorate the Young Turk Revolution in the Ottoman Empire. So this is pretty far afield from what anyone else has talked about, but I've actually been working on this since 1998. It's an ongoing research project of mine to bring light to lesser known Turkish composers. And I already have about 6 arrangements of this piece. You'll see at the bottom of the website is the recent recording made by And We Were Heard. Thank you very much to And We Were Heard for providing that reading of my most recent concert band arrangement. But I also have a brass quintet arrangement, woodwind quintet arrangement, string arrangement. So it is, even though those are fixed arrangements, it is very adaptable. And one of these links takes you to a page where you can access a free article that I wrote about her that was published in the International Alliance for Women in Music Journal, and which also includes the original melody that she wrote and my piano arrangement. So the nature of this music is that she was composing in an Ottoman style, which means she wrote the melody and then people were literally improvising along with the melody that she wrote as a song. So it lends itself automatically to arranging. I also thought, I don't want to detract from what everyone else has said about the importance of getting students to perform and even explore their own creativity, but this is also an opportunity if you want to delve into a little bit of history and provide these free resources to your students to learn about the time period, her unique life, and how she became a composer in the Ottoman Empire, the turn of the 20th century. So that's pretty much what I have.
Thank you so much, Catherine. Any questions for her? Caitlin, are you still with us? Caitlin Bobe?
I'm here.
Hey, Caitlin, what an incredible initiative you started with And We Were Heard. And I'm sorry, we're running late, but I do want to give you the opportunity. Can you, in 20 seconds, tell everybody who may not know what And We Were Heard is?
Yes, thank you so much for giving me that platform. And We Were Heard is andwewereheard.org, and we basically are trying to close the gap for underrepresented composers, trying to get their music out there who are mostly self-published. So we basically do collaborative recording sessions with them where they send their music in and we find an ensemble who's going to do a high quality recording of that project with them and give them some feedback and help so they can get their name out there. And we are hoping to be able to collaborate with underrepresented composers this fall with any sort of flexible or aleatoric projects that they have going to work with this, because there is a need for this music outside of just this fall, especially like with small colleges like where I teach. So we're excited about moving in that direction as well.
Caitlin, brava. Thank you so much for starting that initiative. Great job. You've done a wonderful thing for the profession. Thank you. Okay, last chance. Any questions for Catherine? Okay, let's move to our final composer for the evening, Steve Danu. Steve, are you with us?
I'm here. Thanks so much, Robert.
Great to see you, Steve. Floor is
Yeah,
yours.
you too. And thanks to everyone for allowing me to speak briefly here. I'll be really quick. I'm currently finishing up an arrangement of 3 Thomas Tallis, English Renaissance composer, 3 of his tunes for a 4-part flexible ensemble, plus some optional percussion. It's going to be about grade 3, grade 4. You know, I mean, Thomas Tallis music is so beautiful. I think it can be played, you know, certainly by high schools into college and beyond. I'm actually going to provide each arrangement in multiple keys so that, you know, you could experiment with the students and try it in different keys and see, you know, what keys you like, what you don't, how it changes the music. I'm going to provide a bunch of sort of creative teaching ideas, you know, adding a Picardy third at the end or not, you know, see what your students like, different registers, you know, exploring different ways to use the pieces. So they're going to be ready July 1. That's my plan. And thanks again for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Steve, and thanks for writing so generously for WINS. Just like I said to James Seiler, thanks for your great contributions. Any questions for Steve? Okay, and Steve, I believe you posted something about that on your site today that maybe got shared in our group as well, right?
Correct, yeah. So, and I'll share in the chat a little 1-page image that you can see kind of what one of them looks like.
Thank you. Okay, 2 of our CRI composers who are with us graciously agreed to not speak today. We've gone an hour and a half, and that's probably enough, but I just want to give Brian Balmages and Pete Meekin just a moment. Is there anything you guys want to say about your music, or do you want to wait till the next one? Brian first?
No, I'm happy to wait. Here's the one thing that I really want to just say. It's not about my music. It's about what I've kind of experienced with not only the members of CRI, but just as a music community. One of the beautiful things that's happened for me is that we can all agree that there's a hell of a lot of darkness out there right now, and there's just a lot of noise. And I know John spoke about this a while back, and it's true for me as well, that this kind of has become something that sometimes just enables me to get out of bed some days. And there's a great camaraderie that's developed here. And I love the way in this forum, so many people are supporting each other. I think it's so easy to watch people attack each other, especially of course in social media and everything. And to see such a large community of people now that are just truly trying to support each other and make some beautiful things happen. It really helps me personally. And CRI is just some of the most beautiful people that I could have ever asked to be part of. So I'll share my stuff next time, but it's really been a big deal to me.
Thank you for saying that, Brian. Beautiful. Pete, anything you want to share, or wait till next time? Pete Meekin?
I'll share the music next time, but I just wanted to say thank you to everyone who's shared on here. Being a composer is an easy thing to do in your office, but a hard thing to do when you're sharing your work in front of everybody else. So thank you everyone for sharing. And there's so many personal topics and so many topics that people are talking about that are appropriate for our time. And this, to me, makes it a pretty exciting time to be a composer, and listening to what everyone's saying makes it an exciting time to be a musician, no matter what we're facing right now. I have great hope for the future and have a lot of optimism moving forward. So thank you, everyone.
Absolutely. Everybody, before you log off, let's give all of the composers 1 minute to just put anything that they want in the chat before you go, and then you can save the chat and that will stay with them So composers, if there's anything, you just go ahead. Anything you want to drop in there, information, something you wanted to say but ran out of time, something you wanted to say but forgot about, a website, a link, another composer that we should be thinking about, anything at all. We'll just wait for about another 45 seconds to see if there's anything that goes in there. And then we'll all save the chat. Everybody, I'm sure you're all experts, but if not, you just click the three dots down at the bottom of the chat window, and you save the chat that way.
And I just want to pop in and say, while you all are doing the chat thing, that we have been herded so beautifully by Robert Ambrose. He is an honorary composer to us, and his efforts leading this, doing this, and by the way, also doing the CBDNA COVID-19 response committee have just been phenomenal. And I speak for all of us at CRI with really just very deep appreciation for the dedication and focus and work that has gone into all of this on Robert's part. So thank you, Robert.
Sure, thanks, Alex. It's, you guys are easy to work with, and thank you for those kind words. But I'm not creating anything here. I'm creating a space, and you guys. I've always said that composers are the kings and the queens of our profession, and without you, we'd be nothing. And I think we've got the best kings and queens involved in CRI, and everybody. We're just trying to create a platform for other composers to do the same thing, and to get as much repertoire into the hands of directors in the fall as possible. So looks like we're off to a good start there. Okay, everybody, lots of great stuff going into the chat. Before we close for the night, do any of my CRI colleagues have anything? Frank, it looks like you have something you want to say.
Just a request. I mean, all of these composers who shared their music today, I think they deserve our thanks and our applause. Could you all please just unmute and give all of these composers a hand? They all deserve it.
One thing I would love to do, composers, I hope those of you who presented tonight are still with us. I'd like to take a photo with the CRI folks and the composers who presented tonight. So as we close the room, can the composers who presented tonight stay in the room? We'll get a picture with you, and then I want to have just a quick recap with my CRI colleagues and my co-hosts. Everyone, thanks so much for being in the Digital Directors Lounge. Don't forget to save the chat. The Digital Directors Lounge meets every Tuesday night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Next week, my guests will be Eric Whitaker and Gary Green, and you can check our Facebook page for the guests following that. Great to have you with us tonight. Composers who spoke, CRI folks and co-hosts, please stay in the room. Everybody else, have a wonderful night. Thanks so much for being with us.
Bye, everybody.
Michael Doherty, are you here?
Yeah, Mike's here. I saw him there.
Oh, Mike, I didn't even know. I'm so sorry. I never introduced you.
Terrific job, Robert. You did a wonderful job. Bravo to you.
All these composers did a wonderful job. Hang on just a second. We always have a couple of people who maybe step away. We just have to kind of...
You always have to kick a few.